Okay, so this is going to be the next video in the series. It's going to be video number 11, I believe. And in this video, we're going to go over basics of creating file menus. Okay, so these things here at the bottom of the files. Okay, so let me compile my program here. This already. So basically, yeah, so the file, stuff, help, those sub menus here. And we're also going to show you how to create the context menu here. This is what's called a context menu. So this stuff. Okay, so we're going to do basics. It's just basic stuff. Okay, so we're going to go over that. So let's begin with the following. First thing first, so what happens is that as follows. You're going to get you're going to set up like three files. So you're going to have your main file where you create your main function, which you already have created. And then you're going to have another file called resource.h where you're going to put identifiers basically in there. And then we're going to have a third file, it's called resource.rc, where you're going to put our implementation of the menu. So it's a script, it's not a code, basically it's a basic script. So here's how they link. The resource.h file, okay, which has the identifiers, it's linked to the main file via include resource h file here, so you have to include that there. And you have to include that in the resource rc file. So that windows.h file, I'm sorry, the resource.h file has been included in both main and resource rc file to define the identifiers. So, and then what happens is that once you have that, you in the window class structure, which is here, which you basically create to create a window, you need to create that. In the window class LPSZ, which stands for long pointer to string with 0 terminated, menu name. So in that name here, I mean for that structure variable there, okay, or the structure attribute for that structure attribute, you have to do what's called you have to add it there. So what you call what's called a make into resource macro. It's a macro. It's not a function. It's a macro with the identifier from the windows.h header file that you specified here. And let me explain first what make into resource does for us here. Okay, so let me just go here. Okay, so here we go. So make into resource basically takes an integer value, which is 32 bits, and converts it to basically a character pointer. Okay, and which is also 32 bits in the end. But I think the reason they did it is for compatibility reasons, because like as you can notice, the window class from the window class structure, the LPSZ menu name attribute, it's not an integer value. It's the attribute is actually pointer to a string, okay, of size pointer to a string, right? So we need to basically convert our integer value that we define in windows.h, okay, to a pointer compatible, basically to be a pointer compatible value. Okay, so here we go. So what it does is it's going to make into resource macro will take an integer value and convert it to a pointer string. The integer value should not be greater than 65,536, otherwise it will not give you the correct result. And what I mean by that is as follows. So let's say we have initially we have make into resource macro here, and it's basically it's a 32-bit value, an integer. We have an integer with 32 bits value. So in our case, when we had this here, this IDM main menu, when the file is compiled, when the program is compiled, this IDM main menu is going to be 100, which is basically an integer, which is going to be stored in a 32-bit value, okay, by the compiler. So what we're going to do, when you call the make into resource macro, what will happen, the first thing, is it's going to convert it from a 32-bit to a 16-bit by using the word, which is basically unsigned short. Okay, so the unsigned short is going to be 16 bits, basically. So it's going to go from 32 bits which is basically zero, like all the zeros plus ones, which is 256 is basically defined here. Okay, on this level here with the zeros, bunch of zeros there with one there. And then it's going to convert to 16 bits. And that's why we can only have 65,536. The largest integer that we can use for our resource is because of that. I think it's the reason they did it is because for comparability reasons with the 16-bit Windows, I think in the old age, but again, I'm not too sure on that. So, if anybody knows, you can put the comments. And then, what happens? So if you have when you put the, where do you go here? When you put in here, when you define, let's say 70,000, you're not going to get the right value. So you need to keep the definition here, the identifiers, right, to the 65,536 range. So basically, because what it is if you take 2 to the power of 16, that's what you're going to get, 65,536. So the first thing it happens when it takes an integer here, it converts to a 16-bit value. And then once that's converted, we're converting it back to a 32-bit value by changing it to an unsigned long, which is a D word, unsigned long. So we're adding back those another 16 here, but they're all zeros. Okay, so they're back zeros. And then finally, when we call character with an asterisk, we're making that 32-bit value, and becomes, at this point, it becomes, once we call the character bit value, becomes a pointer to a string. So the address itself, the 256, is basically is as if it was like a pointer value to something. I'm not sure how they store that information internally, but that's what it's required. So basically, so long as the resource value is less than 65,536, you can either call MAKEINTORESOURCE macro or typecast it to character asterisk I, and the end result should be the same. Okay, so you can either call them MAKEINTORESOURCE, or you can just typecast it, and you will get the same results. So basically, you can do something like this: you can call MAKEINTORESOURCE I, or you can type in LP string I, or you can type in character asterisk I. So they will give you the same result for, where you go here, for this item here. So instead of calling MAKEINTORESOURCE, right, you can call, put brackets and type in lpstr, long pointer to a string, and then the IDM main menu, and it's going to have the same result. And IDM main menu, it's an identifier which is, I made it up, like you can make it up yourself, and it's supposed, by the convention, is supposed to, identify the identifier should be more like you should be able to identify for which the identifier stands for. So ID stands for ID and M for menu, right? So by convention, but you don't have to do that. Like if you do programming for yourself, right? You can call whatever you like. Okay. So that's what we have to do so that's what the MAKEINTORESOURCE function does. Macro does for us. Okay. So it's very basic resource, but it's important that we have to convert it from a integer value to a character pointer value in order for us to be able to call this function here, to be able to assign to the attribute value of the window class. Otherwise, you're gonna get an error message. So that's the first thing. Okay, so now that we have assigned here, let me go over the resource file here. As you can see, we have the IDM main menu. So identifiers here. Then it's followed by a menu keyword. In the script, menu is a reserved word, so it has a special meaning. So you cannot use it for yourself, And then we call begin, and then after each begin statement has to have an end statement in the end. So begin and end has to be together. So the way it works is like, let's see here. Let me just see if I have a better presentation here of the stuff here. Okay, here we go. So begin here and then after that we call pop-up. And what the pop-up does, it creates those top menu file items. Okay, so when you have like a program like we have here, the pop-up it displays, so those things will pop up. Okay, and this stuff here, it's the sub menu. It's actually what's called sub menu. Okay, and this is the main menu. The top items are the main menu. So when you have pop-up file, pop-up stuff, pop-up help, so it creates those 3 items. And then what happens after that, you call begin again, and now you're creating the sub menu with those other items. So you call menu item, then in quotation marks, whatever you want to show to display in the menu, followed by an identifier. So each item in the sub menu has to have an identifier. So when you select that item, the system knows which item you selected. Okay, so in my case, I just put 102, 101. Okay, so that's an identifier. So the pop-up, then I have another submenu, and begin and end are in quotes, and then I have another pop-up help, and then another about menu item, and then end, and then this ends the whole thing. So so the menu item creates the submenu here when you call begin and end here, and the pop-up here creates the main menu. So hopefully that's a little bit obvious here. All right, and so let's now move on here. So that we have that. So yeah, so this is basically like the resource H file. And there are some programs out there that will build the menu for you. If you look around, that you can just drag and drop, and then the menu will be built for you, or you can do it manually. You could code it yourself. You can write the script in the resource file there. Okay, so now let's see what happens when you click on file, like so. Let's see, like file, and then let's say we click exit here. We select exit. In my case, we're gonna display an exit. So this is the message that I programmed in. So it's gonna display. So let's look at the past. What happened? Okay, so let me minimize this here for us. So let's say we selected the exit. Okay, so what will the system will do? It's gonna send a VM command message to our window procedure. Okay, and what will happen? The W parameter is gonna be split into 2, high word and low word. So the high word will be all zeros, and low word will be the value basically of the identifier for that menu item. So in our case, when you had here menu item exit, we had 101. Okay, so that way now our program knows how to process this command. So let me just go over the high word and low word again. So high word is bit in an integer value. It's a bit number 31. I mean 60. Bit number 16 to 31, and they're all zeros. And low word is bit number 0 to 15, which okay. So that's the low word and high word. So the low word of that integer of the W parameter, okay, is going to be 101, and high word is going to be 0. The way they did this is because when Windows was, I think, originally in the 16-bit application, so they had to play with it, do some optimizing for the system, to be able to pass on variables, and I think that's why they split the parameter into low word and high word. Okay, so now we have our window message, W parameter, and L parameter. L parameter in our case is all zeros when it comes to VM command message. So VM command message is going to have a W parameter with a low word of the item identifier for the item, high word 0, and L parameter 0. So what happens then? The message is processed to our switch, the main message loop. We'll switch. Then we're going to switch from message to our VM command, which we're going to process. And then we're going to create another, within the VM command message, we're going to create another switch statement with a low word. We're going to use low word and then W parameter to extract the low word will extract basically the W parameter for us to the identifier. And here we're displaying the message box. Okay, so this message that we had, like file exit here. Okay, and then it's going to process. So any other command messages will be in this switch statements. Okay, it's 101. Then if we had if I had to implement the other ones here, like the, let's say, open 102 or show pop-up menu 104 or about 103, that will be showing up in that switch statement there. Okay, so let me, okay, that's there. And let's look at the context menu. So context menu, let me just go compile here again. Then context menu is this item here. So like here, and when you right click it, it shows you a sub menu. Okay, sub menu there in your client area of your window. It could be also inside another window there. It also show, because this window here, it's also inside the client area of our main window, so it's still going to show there. Okay, so let's look at that. So here's what's happening there. There we go. Okay, here we go. So to get our context menu, so when you right click a mouse in the client area of your window, then Windows operating system will send you your main window procedure a VM context menu command. The W parameter contains the handle to a window where the mouse was right clicked. Okay, so what it means is that, let's say if I clicked here, that would be the handle to this window, to the main window. But if I clicked in here, that would be the handle to this child window. And if I click inside this one, there'll be a handle to this child window inside the child window. So it will basically give you the handle to whichever the window inside the client area that right hand mouse button was clicked. The L parameter, low word of the L parameter contains the horizontal position of the cursor, and the high word of the L parameter contains the vertical position of the cursor. Okay, we don't need that here. Let me remove this. So let's look at this here. So the first thing what we need to do is we have to extract our menu, our sub menu from the menu basically. So what we do here is that we have this menu here, which we basically allocated here. So we have our main menu, which we assign to our window. Okay. So what this code does here for us is as follows. Not this one here. Not this one. Where we go. Okay, here we go. So we're creating two static variables of type A handle to a menu. So H main menu and H sub menu here. We're also creating two integers with horizontal and vertical position for the location where the sub menu is going to be displayed. As you can notice, the static H menu values and non-static integer values. The integer values could be also static if you wanted to, but there is no need for that, because those horizontal positions, we're going to retrieve them every time we get the VM context menu command, while the handles to the menu, we're only going to receive them once, and we're going to keep them for the duration of the program for us. Okay, so that's why they have to be static. So whenever we receive a VM context command, we already need those handles to have a valid handle to our menus. So to retrieve the handle to our main menu, we call the get menu function with a handle to our window. Okay, so and that's done during the VM create message. Okay, so when we call this during the VM create message, we're always gonna get a handle to the main window. Okay, we're not gonna do any sub windows or anything like that. We're just gonna get a handle to the main window. Okay, and then we use that handle to the main window, which we are doing here, and we're gonna call get sub menu, and we're gonna go pass the handle to the main window plus the position of the sub menu that we want to retrieve. So what happens is that sub menus are allocated in a main window as follows. So we have file staff help, which is basically 0, 1, 2. So if you want to, and the sub menus are assigned to each of those menu items are based also on 0, 1, 2. So if we want the sub menu for help, we would call get submenu with the number 2 instead of 0 there. Okay, so we're going to get handle to the submenu for our main function. And then what happens the next time is, so then whenever we receive a VM context menu message, okay, we're going to do two things. First, we're going to retrieve in a horizontal and vertical position by calling the macro low word and high word with the L parameter. Okay, so we're going to pass L parameter to this macro, which is going to retrieve us the horizontal vertical position. And then we're going to call the track pop-up menu. The track pop-up menu function is actually the function that's going to display the shortcut menu file. So when we right click on it, this open at this point. Okay, the track pop-up menu is displaying that function, that basically displaying as the shortcut here. Okay, and the track pop-up menu function takes a handle to the submenu that we want to display, how the menu is to be aligned. So the next item here, how do you want to align the menu, the horizontal and vertical position. The next value after that, it's reserved, it must be 0. Then you pass in the handle to the window, to the parent window basically, where that item is to be displayed. And the last item basically is ignored completely, so it should be no. Okay, and that's going to display as the pop-up window there in our application here. All right, so like this. And so yeah, so this is a short video. I just wanted to go over its basic stuff. In this, I did not include any accelerator values, anything like that. I just wanted to give you guys a basic concept how to integrate this whole thing into your program, the menu, the resource menu. So let's look at the code here. So this is the code, the main function. This is the resource, and this is the header, resource header, and this is the resource RC. Okay, so we have the identifier, we have the resource header file included, menu, pop-up, file, then begin, then we're creating at this point, we're creating our sub menu. So menu item open has an identifier 102, menu item exit has identifier 101. And here you have to separate the identifier with the string text with a comma, sorry, with a comma. Okay. And then, so once we have that, so what we do, we go to our window class definition. Okay. And in there, we assign the MAKEINTORESOURCE with that identifier. So this is how we're linking our menu to our window class. Okay, so the system knows what menu to display in our window, right? Because windows are created based on a class, so we're going to use that class structure to tell the windows which menu we want to display in our window. And then that's going to be it. And then we're going to show you it's going to display. And then let's go to our main window procedure. Okay, so we create during the creation, when we call VM create, we have to retrieve the sub menu for our context. Okay, and then we call in our VM comment message, we have another switch statement here, which processes the low word of double parameter, which tells us which menu item was pressed from the menu. And then we have the context menu, which displays basically our shortcut menu with when we retrieve the low word and the horizontal vertical positions. And then we'll display and we'll call this track pop-up menu function, which displays our shortcut menu. This is basic introduction to menus. This is not it's not advanced by any means. Basically, it just gives you a basic idea. We have not created the menus dynamically, and we haven't done any on a drone. Those are a little bit more advanced subjects that might be covered in the future. But right now we are still dealing with the basics. Okay, and that's how you basically link a resource menu in your Windows application. Okay, thank you.